Hey, um, sorry for the interruptions in the last video. So this is just a part two to the Labour leadership hustings in Nuneaton to share my reflections on what I made of the candidates. Um, I'll just repeat what I said in the last video. I think it's very, very difficult for any leader or any prospective leader to please everyone all the time. It's simply impossible. Um, so sometimes I think people in the studio audience were like, we've heard it all before and so on, but in all honesty, I think people would say that no matter what answer the candidates gave. So that's just a little thing that I have. I think sometimes people underestimate just how hard it is for politicians to please everybody all the time as human beings because they just can't. Um, but what a good leader will do is recognize the challenges that his or her party has and how to get electable without losing values. Now, I believe that is what both Andy Burnham and Vic Cooper are trying to do. I think that if I was to summarize this in a very simplistic way, I think Kendall's too much to the right and Corbyn's too much to the left, and they're both problematic for the party in terms of its direction. Now, if anyone's a supporter of either candidate, let me explain why this is my position. First of all, I'll speak about the candidates in turn. I think that's the easiest way to do this, whilst it's still relatively fresh in my mind. Um, Regarding Jeremy Corbyn, I think he's a decent man. So when I say he's not right for the leadership, it doesn't mean that I have any personal animosity towards him. I think he's a decent man. He comes across as intelligent as well, and I think he could be a capable leader of, for example, a socialist party. Um, and I don't think he's loony left in the sense. I don't think he rants and raves, and I don't think he necessarily fits a caricature of loony left, so to speak. But he is nevertheless hard left. And for me, I have a few concerns about Jeremy Corbyn. Firstly, well, he knows he's not going to become leader, so I guess he's sort of taking the view he can say what he wants. In a way, he can afford to do that because he personally knows he's probably not going to win. Um, but he's probably taken it as a chance to raise the issues, and that's a good thing. But my uneasiness with Mr. Corbyn is some of his connections. For example, he is connected to the Stop the War Coalition. Now, that's an organization I find to be highly dubious, especially in terms of the fact that they have a track record of not recognizing that political Islamism is a reality. They have a track record of refusing to condemn terrorist attacks that occur in Iraq because they blame all the problems on the coalition. Now, whatever your views are on foreign policy, I think there's not many people that support the Stop the War Coalition. There is a reason for that. I think it's a highly dubious organisation. So by extension, given that he's connected to it, I would definitely raise question marks about that. There's a few other things in this Hustings event he came out with that I didn't like. A man was raising concerns about immigration, said he voted for the Conservatives for this reason. Now, instead of addressing the man's point, and the thing here is, Jeremy Corbyn didn't have to agree with the man, but he could have at least acknowledged the man's concerns. But instead, he just got all defensive, and I think he let himself down. Actually, for an intelligent man, he came out with quite a almost juvenile response of simply saying, "Oh, but look at all the good things immigration has done." So basically, repeating a line that a lot of Labour people have used over and over and over again. And I think that was quite sort of condescending almost to the man because he responded with emotions and not simply by focusing on what the man was saying. He didn't have to agree with the man, but he could have given a lot more of a balanced answer to that. Anyone else who watched the event, I hope you would see what I'm getting at because Jeremy Corbyn's answer was simply, "Oh, immigration's all good, and I'm going to ignore the bad." Now that's not leadership quality. To simply focus your mind on one issue and one issue only. I mean, take immigration for instance. Obviously he's got no problem with immigration, Jeremy Corbyn, but whatever his personal views are, a strong leader needs to be able to listen to the public and listen to concerns. Jeremy Corbyn acted very unprofessional there. Maybe it's because he knows he won't win. The other three candidates were more responsible in the response to that question. On other areas, Jeremy Corbyn did come out with things that I liked. He definitely showed compassion. He definitely showed that he has a conscience in terms of social issues. But basically, he is what he is. He's an outside left wing, like hard left wing candidate. I don't think he's loony left. He's not a communist, but he is what he is. And let's face it, we're not going to see a Prime Minister Corbyn now. I'm not someone who believes that somebody should win just because they're popular or just because they are electable. Um, so from a moral point of view, that's not my case here. But I'm just thinking about realities. I did like the fact that Jeremy Corbyn touched on personality politics, and he said that there's far too much obsession with that in the media. I 100% agree with him on that. Unfortunately, it's going to be difficult to overcome that. Very difficult. I respect any politician who stands up to that notion and who stands up to the Murdoch press. So I respect Jeremy Corbyn, but I'm much more of a centrist, so a lot of his positions I wouldn't quite agree with him on. Okay, Yvette Cooper. Well, like Andy Burnham, she's a former government minister, so she's experienced. She could be arguably seen as a political Labour heavyweight. So, she has a real chance of winning. She's currently got the second highest number of nominations after Burnham. I believe she's currently on 59. Um, she gave quite sound answers to a lot of the questions. She gave a business pitch. What I liked about her responses was that she definitely showed centrist credentials without going too much to the centre or without going too much to the right. Um, she said it is important to recognise business. Um, there's two things that stuck out in the answers that she gave. Firstly, one question was about how the candidates compare themselves to Nicola Sturgeon, the leader of the SNP and First Minister of Scotland. Now, the situation is, if you don't know the background of this, that in the UK, the Scottish National Party done very well in the last election, and Nicola Sturgeon's political star has risen very rapidly. Um, as much as I have contempt for her party's agenda, which is the breakup of this country, um, I would absolutely agree that she's a very skilled politician. So it was an interesting question to ask how Labour candidates would compare themselves. Obviously, the Labour Party is a unionist party. They believe in one united kingdom. But the answers they gave were quite interesting. What Jeremy Corbyn said was that Labour made a mistake in going into better together with the Tories. Now, that's a position that I don't agree with. I don't think they were with the Tories. I think what happened was different political parties had the same goal of keeping the United Kingdom together. And frankly, I think people who think that they were in with the Tories are just being short sighted. Um, I mean, throughout the campaign, Jim Murphy vocally condemned a lot of Tory policies. So I don't know how people could argue they were in with the Tories just because they were both part better together. And surely that says something about the Better Together campaign that different people from across the spectrum had put aside their political differences for one issue that was greater, which was the future of this country. I mean, the whole point about the Scottish referendum was the very future of the country itself, because all policies can be debated and governments can be voted in and out, but the future of the country is non-negotiable. That is the point. But anyway, I'm going to get into different territory there. Um, Yvette Cooper gave, as I'd anticipated, a feminist answer. I mean, to be fair, she had answered the question, and the woman had asked, "What do you think you have in common with Nicola Sturgeon?" She said, "Well, we're both women, and I'd like the Labour Party to choose its first woman prime minister." Now, that's an issue, something I take issue with. Um, what a lot of Labour feminists seem to hold the position that someone should be leader because they're a woman, and because Labour's never had a woman leader. Well, actually, Harriet Harman has been interim leader on two occasions, but If the argument is that we need another woman prime minister, I think there might be a case for that, but I fundamentally believe that someone should be chosen for their policies and their ideology, not whether they're male or female. So I think the premise of the argument is a flawed one. And as a male voter, I have long been wary of some of the hardline feminist attitudes within the Labour Party. They do have a track record of sexism. For example, women only conferences, um, women only shortlists. This is something I believe is undemocratic and just fundamentally sexist. And I don't know how you can argue that it isn't. Um, I'm not saying that Yvette Cooper is a man hating feminazi. I'm not saying that. But as a male voter, I am wary of any politician that panders to a specific community. And, you know, I want a leader who's going to represent all British people, not just half the population. So it's one thing saying that, and already her supporters are pitching her as appealing to women. My question is, to all due respect to women, why are women's concerns more important than men's? I mean, imagine the situation if political pundits were to say, "Oh, this is what men want." It would be called patriarchy. Um, I'm tired of the notion that women are a charity. It's patronising to women. And it's also insinuating that all women think the same, which is ridiculous. So I entirely reject the feminist premise that really does exist within the Labour Party. Um, they need to start treating women voters as just voters, like everyone else. Because you get conservative women, you get socialist women. Um, so I really take issue with, and that also applies to like pandering to any other community just for the sake of it. Um, I really do take issue with that. Now, some people will say, "Oh, well, you're a white male, you're privileged," but I believe that a real equality comes from actually treating people equally, not treating people like charity. But that might be for another video. So, her answer there did reveal something. However, on other issues that matter to me, she came out with good, solid centrist responses. Now, one woman in the audience said that she voted Conservative, and the premise for doing this was the Labour Party's perceived stance on welfare. Now, this was something that Yvette Cooper and Andy Burnham both handled well, and this interested me. This really caught my attention. Jeremy Corbyn's response was pleasing to me, but predictable because it's what I thought he would say. He's a left winger, and he came out with a compassionate response about how we need to be, not demonise people and so on. I thought that Cooper and Burnham would go down a Blairite line on this and use the Tories' language. To their credit, they didn't. They could easily have done that because this was not a Labour audience. A lot of the people in the audience had voted Tory, and the woman, her point was that she has a grievance against people claiming welfare when she's in struggling to get by. And she wouldn't be. She said something. I don't know the exact circumstance, but she said something about if she lost her job, she would lose her house and so on. So the woman is clearly under some pressure. But unfortunately, she was buying, in my opinion, she was buying the Tory technique of turning society against itself. Um, Now, I believe that there are problems in the welfare system. I believe there are people that abuse it. But to their credit, Jeremy Corbyn, Yvette Cooper, and Andy Burnham all took a balanced approach. Well, I should say Burnham and Cooper. Corbyn took a very left-wing approach. But what Cooper and Burnham done was they did show leadership quality there because they basically said, look, well, there are people that abuse the system. We need to instill responsibility. But what we're not going to do, and I'm saying that we, because they both give a very similar answer to this, we're not going to scapegoat people. We're not going to use the Tory language and call people work shy and lazy benefit scroungers and this sort of thing. Now, the Labour Party's position on this is an important thing because there is a strange perception in society, and I think it definitely comes from the Murdoch press, that Labour is somehow soft on the unemployed. And a lot of idiots, quite frankly, and I don't care if they're offended. I'm not a politician. I've got nothing to lose here. seem to think the Labour Party is soft on the unemployed. Like I said in the previous video, I went through the workfare programme under a Labour government. Labour may use softer language, but in many ways it's just as hard as the Tories. Labour used workfare, that is forced on paid labour. It was Labour that launched that campaign like, we're closing in on you. So I really don't understand where this notion that Labour is soft on the unemployed comes from. I really don't get that. It could be that a lot of people who are claimants happen to vote Labour, but I think that has more to do with the fact that in many places, especially in the north of England, there's a family tradition of voting Labour, and frankly, a lot of people vote for who their parents vote for. I don't think it's because they think Labour's going to give them free money at all. And I think people who really believe that haven't done their homework and they really don't know what they're talking about. They're believing everything they read in the gutter press. Now, I am open minded on this. Again, I understand there are people who abuse the system. That's wrong. And I agree that there needs to be responsibilities if you're taking money from the state. But what Jeremy Corbyn said was also right. If we are part of a civic society, we pay into the system, we are all of us, would be eligible for that system. At least that's the way it should be. So the point about the welfare state is not giving out free money. That's that's a complete distortion. Um, and I do give Andy Burnham and Yvette Cooper credit for being honest about that and for saying that we're not going to scapegoat the unemployed, but we'll insist on responsibility. However, I still need to look into their position on workfare. If they go ahead and support workfare, that would be, to me, very disappointing. Um, Now, if either of those people go ahead and say workfare's what wrong, we're not going to go for that, because I don't think that abolishing workfare is a radical thing. I really, really don't. If that was their position, then I would be very enthusiastic for either of them. I would even over the feminist issues I spoke about, because there's a lot of issues I care about. Like I said, Andy Burnham gave a similar response about compassion mixed with responsibility. Now, this Kendall, I'll come to her. Um, Overall, I would say she was probably the candidate that least impressed me. She came across as very aggressive throughout the whole hustings. She looked very tense. She sounded intelligent. She certainly looked like she could be a leader, but definitely not the sort of leader that I want to see. Um, Basically, she came across as Tony Blair, a female Tony Blair. But unlike Blair, she didn't even try a charm offensive. She unashamedly used Tory language on the question about welfare. She absolutely endorsed a woman's position. She didn't even attempt to say, if Liz Kendall had said that my position is that we do need to be tough or whatever, I would, I would accept that that's her honest position. But if she'd at least balanced that out a little bit and said, "But I agree, we shouldn't demonize everyone on welfare." She didn't even attempt to do that. So that has definitely had an impact on my views on Liz Kendall. She just came out with an outright Tory answer to that question. It was frankly shameful that she would pander to Tory rhetoric. Now I understand Labour have to make they have to understand where they're being perceived in a certain way. But Andy Burnham and Yvette Cooper done that in a responsible way. They said we need to instill responsibility, but they also said we're not going to scapegoat the unemployed. That to me seemed reasonable. Um, what Liz Kendall done was she just used Tory language. Didn't even attempt to recognise some of the points that other members of the audience were making, like a young man pointed out the unfairness of tax, massive companies getting off the hook with overseas tax havens and this sort of thing. Basically, this Kendall was so Tory-esque, she didn't even try to hide it. Now, she sounded like she was intelligent, she knew what she was talking about, but she did not look like she should be the leader of a social democratic party. She looked like she would be the CEO of a multinational. That's how she came across. So I was not impressed at all by that. Anyway, that's my views. I'm going to round it up here. Based on that, it's tough, but for me, it's somewhere between Cooper and Burnham. I like Jeremy Corbyn, but some of his connections, for example, to the Stop the War coalition, I'm uneasy with. And I also think his answer to the immigration question was quite condescending. I didn't like that. Um, and it's a problem that the left have. They tend to respond emotionally to some problems and not really take on board. I mean, the man clearly said that, look, I'm not a racist, but I just have concerns about this. Jeremy Corbyn didn't even attempt to be diplomatic. He didn't even say, well, sir, I don't believe that everyone who has a different view is racist. If he'd said that, he would have got some credibility, I think. But he just came out with a typical hard left answer, which was, oh, immigration's all good, don't complain about it. That was pretty much his answer. And I thought he let himself down with that. Because I think Jeremy Corbyn's an intelligent man. I think he could have given a much better answer. Um, so again, very briefly summarised, Jeremy Corbyn is a token socialist candidate. He won't win, but he's a decent man who has conviction. Um, I want to know more about Andy Burnham and Yvette Cooper. I think they have solid centrist credentials. Andy Burnham's a northerner, so that could definitely appeal to a lot of Labour voters. It might put off some southerners. It's a pity that we still have that sort of mindset. And personally, I couldn't care less of the leaders from the north or the south, but unfortunately, a lot of people do. Um, like I say, so Cooper and Burnham, I think, are solid centrists, but I still want to see their positions on workfare because that's a subject I've got strong views on. And with Vivek Cooper, I am slightly wary about the fact that she's, um, well, like most Labour women, she's a feminist, and well, I've got views about third wave feminism. Um, because I don't believe it's truly egalitarian. Um, although having said that, I'll just make a quick disclaimer with that. I don't actually believe that someone like Yvette Cooper is going to go in and just represent women. I think she'll be a good MP for a good leader for men as well. But just a lot of her positions with the feminist thing does make me concerned. Liz Kendall, like I say, she came across as a hardline, hard-nosed CEO. She came across as very almost angry throughout the debate. She interrupted Andy Burnham a few times, quite rudely, I thought. Um, she was like, "Oh, wait, Andy." At one point, I got a snigger from the audience. But what struck me about that was, imagine if it had been the other way around, and Andy Burnham or Jeremy Corbyn said, "Oh, wait, Liz," you'd immediately get Labour feminists calling him sexist. So I'd like to see if Labour feminists, call her out for being rude to her colleague. Um, I don't think they will. I don't want her to win, and she doesn't deserve to win because it's one thing saying that you're the biggest threat to the Tories, and she may well be. But this isn't just about politics; it is about values as well. And she's trying to win by out-Torying the Tories. That's the impression she gives. So the only reason the Tories are scared of her is because she resembles them in so many ways. Tonight, she made no real attempt to show that she was any different from the sort of way that they think. And she had plenty of opportunities to do that. At the start, she said, "Oh, I'm not a Blairite, I'm not a Brownite." But she came across as very Blairite in that. The Blairism worked in 1997, but people are a lot more cynical now and with good reason. Anyway, I've been talking for a while here, so let me know your thoughts. Even if you're not a Labour supporter, let me know your thoughts about the candidates. I'm not a Labour supporter, but there is a chance that at least one of three of these people will be our next Prime Minister. I'm surprised Tristram Hunt didn't put his name into the ring, but that's what happens. In terms of my speculation, I think Burnham might just get it, but if Cooper gets it, I wouldn't be surprised. I think it's going to be very tight between them two. Um, and I can see either one of them as a leader. Let me know your thoughts.